Hey there, this is Dan. You're watching the Salty Sea, and I'm excited today because I'm going to be bringing you some narrative content. I don't do nearly enough narrative stuff on the show, but I got to bring in some ringers. Really, the people who probably do the most narrative content in the entire game, the Dogs of Warcry. Hey, Josh and Vint, can you guys introduce yourselves a little bit and tell us what you're about?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Josh Arrington, and I'm part of the Mortal Realms podcast group with the Dogs of Warcry podcast, and with Payman and Eric occasionally as well. So we love Warcry. It's a great game, and we love talking about all the lore and the games, and kind of making opportunities for people to play with each other as well.
I'm Vince. I'm here as a recent add to the Dogs of Warcry and the Mortal Realms community as a whole. And I work with the team Tundra Tactics out of Madison, um, helping with a lot of like community outreach stuff in the Age of Sigmar and the worlds that surround it, be it Underworlds or Warcry.
Yeah, it's cool. And for those who don't know, these guys ran an incredibly tight narrative event at Adepticon. I don't know if you guys are going to be doing it next year, but for anyone watching, if they are, you should definitely sign up and do it because I was really impressed. And I had actually committed to wanting to interview you guys even before the event, but once we actually went through it and saw how awesome it was, made me even more excited for this. So let's kind of start with general stuff, though. Like for each of you, what got you into Warcry in particular?
Sure. I'll just jump in first.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of skirmish games. Especially going way back to Mordheim. Loved it. Played a lot of it. And when we first saw Warcry, it was going to be an opportunity. I played a little bit of AOS skirmish, and it was okay, but not quite the same robustness, I guess.
Sure.
So Warcry got me really excited to have a nice, smaller skirmish style game that you could use to lead into bigger fantasy games in AOS, or gives you the opportunity for lots of interesting terrain and different types of warbands that didn't have the same obligation of an entire army. So that's what got me really excited at first. What you
For me, I've been a dyed in the cloth chaos player for quite a while, and when I saw that there is a smaller game, I also do a lot of traveling. So a
Hmm.
smaller game I can take with me with a continuing narrative that I don't have to play just me and Josh 12 times to get through the game. I was hooked. What are you saying? So there's chaos and narrative, and they work together. I'm in. Sign me up
Yeah,
twice.
yeah,
Yeah, for me it was it, I kind of wanted to also ask you guys what made it stick, because for me, a big part of it, the answer for both what got me into it and what made it stick for me was how much more kind of approachable it was. It was the first time I played a tabletop war game with my wife where she was like, I would play that again without you having to twist my arm. Um, in terms of just, it's, yeah, the skirmish aspect of it, I think in general, skirmish games are really great. Um, and just how smoothly it moves. It's a very quick flowing game. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't know about you guys. What brings you back to it?
Yeah, no, I think the different narrative options are awesome. That you can have heroes, you can have allies and monsters, and all the different ways that they continue to add to kind of build that story. And like
Hmm.
Ben said, being able to play against people and still progress your story no matter what you're doing is I thought was a great addition to it. Because kind of like the new Path to Glory system where it doesn't matter who you're playing against, you can still advance your narrative. I thought that was a great way to kind of compromise all sorts of players.
Hmm.
Well, and the story, right? The story makes it stick, and the amount of missions, right? Coming
Yeah.
from a background of semi-competitive play for many years, like I don't think I've ever played the same mission in Warcry twice, unless it was a convergence.
Hmm.
So you're never looking at the same table, and rarely are you looking at the same warband you're playing against, right? It falls in line with a lot of the other skirmish games, and as the communities grow, you're seeing people with multiple teams and multiple, war bands and multiple um, groups in general, right? So nobody just has their one, right? I only play Spire Tyrants, tamp. They're going to play you with, K-Knight Shadow Stalkers this week. Next week it might be Cities of Sigmar. And it just keeps that variety really, really nice and keeps the game feeling really, really fresh all the time.
Yeah, and is there anything? So you guys talked about kind of the wide variety of missions, stuff like that. Is that kind of the main thing about Warcry in particular that drives you towards narrative play, or is there anything about the game, sort of the game mechanics that drive you towards it? Or I'm just very curious because coming from Magic, I kind of came into it in the matched play sense.
Sure.
So I'm just very curious about kind of the other perspective.
I'll let you take this one first.
Yeah, so when it comes to like narrative gaming versus competitive gaming, it all ends up personalized. And I think that's one of the great things about all Warhammer, right? Is that your army, it's your models, they're your team, they're your thing. And being able to build on that has always been something I've done, right? It doesn't matter if I'm taking my army to the third, 40K competitive map ever, I'm going to have a narrative for it. They're doing this for a reason. And with Warcry, the rewards for doing narrative are just so good, and they make it make sense, and it makes it flow so easy, that even if it was, even if you're doing the match play part of it and looking for a more balanced experience, you're still going to have a great time. And it's still going to be narrative, and it's still going to be part of the focus, right? The why you did it, who survived, how it worked, the hows and the whats, are just so big. It's not, did I score my 7.6 points this turn, right? Like, it's such a really cool and unique experience coming from a match play that it gives you kind of again, unique and fun way to engage in your own narrative and help write it with your friends. And with new people as well. It's just such a good bonding game. The other part of it that I think really grabs me, and this is again with any small skirmish game or quicker game to play, is that if you're playing one of the bigger games, sometimes you can get like quagmired down in a game where it's just not quite the experience you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
In Warcry, you get beat up, you re-rack, and you're back at it in a second. And that's really, really awesome. And it's the ability to knock out 4 games in an afternoon or 5 games in an afternoon, with some beers with some friends, that just really makes the game fun and really like allows and lends itself to the narrative. If you can write a chapter a day, you'll get a novel done in no time. But if you're sitting down and writing like 3 chapters a day, man, you'll be token in no time.
Yeah, I like that you kind of talked about each game as a chapter of your narrative. I've been, kind of before this, I've been kind of thinking a little bit about how to actually frame it, right? Because I think in the US, a lot of the people who would maybe dive into a game like Warcry for narrative, a lot of them play Dungeons and Dragons, right? Which has this kind of you're all standing next to each other, fighting the same goal, right? It's sort of a collaborative experience, which I find that narrative gaming, on the tabletop in Warcry is a collaborative experience, but you're set up as adversaries to each other. So I've been kind of trying to grok that difference a little bit, but the way you explain it with chapters does kind of help with that. I don't know. How do you think about kind of the storytelling aspect of facing against someone who's also telling their story?
Well, I think it's fun, and I think that's the general. Every book you read has got the antagonist, protagonist, and and that's essentially what you got here. You got, you're writing your story, and you're going to have challenges along the way, and whether it's the monster that you're trying to capture, or whether it's your opponent who's trying to defy you, or you happen to run into them. I think it's a great opportunity to kind of define you and develop those rivalries, and that's part of that fun narrative experience. I know we're wandering around this place together, whether it's Excelsis or the 8 Points, and you've got rival warbands that are on their own, they're doing their own missions, but they're gonna try and pull you along the way. Defines your characters, highlights those that do exceptionally well in that particular game, and the artifacts you get along the way. So it's fun, and I think I've been part of groups where you sat down and write a short summary after each game, and then you kind of shared that, so you got this flowing narrative, and then there's other groups where you just like, yeah, it was awesome, I got these items, we talk about it, and we've got this ongoing rivalry, and then there's even games where you set up and say, okay, here's a chance for you to kill my leader, like Pavement and I had. If you can pull it off, he's dead, and I have to promote another guy. So you can develop these stories and make it work for you, even though it's not necessarily part of the rules. Your leader doesn't normally die, but it makes an exciting, conclusion to this narrative chapter, so to speak. So.
And so you find that works generally with each person telling, like, do you ever do the setup of someone kind of being essentially the DM of they're bringing the kind of straw man warband, and then someone else is doing their big convergence, or do you kind of like to do it with each person just in the middle of their own campaign?
We've done it both ways. When we run leagues, so a lot of us are competitive, so we will try to win, and we will make you work really hard to get that convergence. Yeah. But if it's a brand new player and it's their first convergence and not used to the game, I might just play 1,000 points instead of 1,500. Or if I had a different warband, I might play that one instead. That doesn't have as many artifacts and this and everything else, or just not use those, so that they have a more balanced experience. Mm-hmm. But in cases of so you can kind of Matt and I kind of helping running the league, make sure everybody's happy and engaged and whatnot. We'll do that sort of behavior, but we'll also set up an event where I'll GM it, and then it's a multiplayer event, kind of like the Mega Gargant battle, right? Where we're just got 6 to 8 people on the table. They're trying to do this event. They're fighting against each other. They're fighting against the NPCs, the monsters, and I'm just trying to make sure all the rules are working out right and everything else. And that's just as fun, because then you're like, yeah, let's see what happens. Let's see if this story works. And taking notes of, okay, what might I improve next time? Right? So,
yeah. Well, you brought it up. Let's just jump into that event. Like, just with the Gargants in particular, what made you decide on that? Like, what was the preparation you had to do to make that happen? Like, what? Yeah, I want to know more.
We were trying to figure out timing, right? Because it was really hard after a couple of years. A lot of people have been playing. It's like, well, we got an event. There's people, all sorts of range of experiences. How long is each round going to take? So we're like, it can be anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, and we had a certain slot of time. So we said, well, okay, maybe we'll plan for 3 missions instead of 4, just in case things take longer. But just in case, maybe we'll plan for this optional event that might be wacky, kind of fun. And I do enjoy multiplayer games and multiplayer events because, it's something different people aren't used to playing, like half the warband size, it's a unique scenario. Yeah. And you always, in most cases, you have to decide, am I going to attack my neighbor, or am I going to try and achieve the objective, or whatever else? But the Mega Gargant battle just happened to work out because Vitt and I were thinking about, well, how many monsters do we have? Can we do monster battles? And like, we don't have monsters. And he was like, but we do know people with Gargants, Mega Gargants. And I was like, oh, there's a mission in the Tournament Champions 2020 with Mega Gargants. We could get 5, get some from the community. We can make this work.
Yeah, it was a really cool thing, really, right? Like, it really was. Me and Josh are on the ropes. We're like, what are we gonna do for a really cool last battle? I played trolls as one of my Age of Sigmar armies. I was like, I have a bunch of trolls. We have a couple people that we know that had them, and it was really just, again, like, we're very fortunate here to have the community we do. And it really was like we tapped the sky and it started raining Mega Gargants on us. Like, we had everything we needed in seconds. It was insane. And it was really, really cool. And the people who let us borrow their Gargants were just super pumped to see them used in that way. I sent them all pictures of the event as it was going on, and everybody was super pumped just to see it. And again, with Warcry, the narrative is just so built in. They asked me, like, hey, so what did our Gargants do? Like, what did my Gargant, who did he kill? Like, what did he do? Like, how does it even work? Like, because one of the players doesn't play Warcry, he just does Age of Sigmar. He's like, this looks awesome. Like they got
Yeah.
stuck on this small table with this giant. Like cool. So it was super duper fun, and again, thanks to those guys, like we were able to do this giant event that I don't know how often we'll be, like anybody else will be able to do. Like it's a cool event, and it was a lot of fun. And Josh's creative expertise, it went super smooth. So
We made some last minute adjustments.
Yeah, I was impressed at how smoothly it all went, just like from start to finish, not just the Mega Gargant battle. Like, so you wrote all 5 of those branching quests, right? Or did you take
we
some?
did.
Yeah.
Taco
between the two of
3
us.
and we had Taco 2, so we kind of tried to divide it up a little bit because you're pouring your effort in there, it takes a little while. But yeah, it turned out well, so it was good.
Yeah, so I kind of wanna like interrogate you guys on the nitty gritty. Then, I mean, how do you approach just right away? You haven't even written the story yet, right? How do you think about how I want to plan out these 5 branching quests?
Well, it took us a little while. Oh, man.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. We did. Both of us have been a long time RPG and narrative players, right? And we've done things that were aligned with this, but neither of us had done something like this before. It was brand new, right? I don't mean to speak out of turn, but it was very brand new for both of us, and we're like, let's just try. Let's write them so we're having fun, right?
Right.
I came up with some outlines and sent them to Josh, and we worked together, and then split the stories down the middle and got really great stuff. Like a little bit of work, a little bit of elbow grease. I wish there was a better answer, but it was. We both have the same background in understanding the lore and what's going on, and we picked Excelsis. Like one of the things, all right, that's one, right? We started with a city. We're all going to be in the same city. Where should we be? Do we want to be in the Chaos Waste? Do we not want to be in the Chaos Waste? If we're in the Chaos Waste, how is that going to react or reflect with, the people who are Order or Death? And how is that going to change up their narrative and how it's going to work? So at the end of the Broken Realms series, we get to Excelsius, and everybody's there. And it is an absolute super battle. And so we figured, hey, look, this is a convergence of its own assortment, right? Everybody's here. Everybody's doing something. So let's start here. So finding the setting was first, and then everything else just, Josh is a wizard, and we just worked together and got her done. Josh, what do you think?
It's perfect. We had to decide on the setting, and we were like, let's do something memorable. Let's take it out of the 8 points, and show people that we can do an event with Warcry outside the 8 points. And then he brought up Excelsius, and I thought, that's great. We've got a ruined city, it fits perfectly, and we don't need to have, we don't have to worry about armies or whatever there. People can be playing around the ruins, no problems whatsoever. So, and from that point, we kind of said, well, if we're going to kind of format it similarly to the branching quests, we kind of need, how many branches do we want? And originally, I kind of thought, oh yeah, we'll have it split up into 2, and then 2 again, and then 2, and as we were writing it, we're like, oh, okay, we got to cut this in half instead of 8 relics per. It's like it was way too much work, which I think it worked well. We still got a lot of good choices, and it was still, without having twice as many different things to print off.
And you ended up with 20 end games, is that right? I'm trying to remember, right? 5 quests, 4 branches each.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was kind of more of a, we want to treat this, normally it's a branching quest as a normal narrative event, and you've got 1 point you get a command trait, 1 point you get an artifact, and then, at different convergences. And essentially our event was going to be 3 convergences, but we had to design it in a way that you didn't have to win your convergence to continue the story, and the branching quest lets you do that, which is nice.
Right.
So we kind of made the missions independent of that so that you could still play the mission, and then we decided to add the hidden agenda to make it more narrative specific for that quest, even though the mission is independent. And then that way we could design each one and have no matter what happened, your narrative continued, you still got 2 choices. We decide, okay, we'll throw that command trait in game 2. That way they can use it for the rest of the event. And then you get the artifact in the end of 3, and then if they stay around, you can use that in the bonus event. Just kind of try to compact that whole quest into a series of 3 games. So.
Right. And I really had a good time, because the cool thing about this event is you can't, in the book, you can just look ahead to see what the rewards are. I don't suggest it for anyone because it will lessen your experience, but for a lot of people, it can be hard to resist. Um, for for me, especially because I often want to optimize even when I'm purposefully de-optimizing, right? So I spent the whole time trying to guess what would be the things that would sort of help my warband's weaknesses generally, and trying to go that route of the quest, and that made it really sort of suspenseful and also a little maddening, um, which I think is good, right? I think that's the point. Did you like so when you're writing these and then deciding on the rewards, are you sort of homebrewing your own rewards? Are you picking from the book? Are you I guess I have a lot of questions. Let's just start there.
Yeah, no, we actually did a mixture of that. So we, just like you'd said, anytime I did a choose your own adventure book when I was a kid, I'd be on flipping pages. What happens if I go to that one? What happens if I go to that one? And I've read all the branching quests and faded quests, and what do you get at the end of it? So I was like, we got to prevent that somehow. We'll just do these 4-page sheets so people read the narrative and they decide based on the narrative. So we thought that would be a good way to introduce that element. But in terms of so I got the question now, so I was kind of mentioning that. But in terms of the
writing the rewards and the what comes out of it, like on some of our rough drafts, I would just type in like stinky skull and send it, and Josh would fill in the blanks, and it always made sense, right? It just you do some goofy something or other for the name, because at the end of the day, it's what it does, and it all got reflected. I know Josh went into some pretty extensive things to make those hidden agendas and those things work, but they all flowed super smooth. So, but yeah,
I was gonna say, to your question, yeah, a lot of them were kind of pulled out of existing ones. What I noticed is in the some of the newer books, especially 2021 and some of the Grand Alliance books, some of those artifacts are super powerful, like 2d6 damage, and I was like, okay, well, we don't want anything like that floating around if we have this legacy artifact that people are going to bring back to new events, right?
Right.
So we kind of put it in line with the more standard artifacts that are kind of out there, change the names on a few. Some of them, we would come up with this great idea, and I was like, okay, well, we got to come up with some unique, mechanic for this particular item or whatever else. So we kind of try to do that for the command traits and the artifacts, is make it similar and maybe just a little bit different, but nothing too far out there, nothing more like the newer types of artifacts.
And so how much did you try to theme them to the quest itself, or how much did you just kind of decide to go left field surprise on what you'd get?
Yeah, no, we tried to make them themed, and that's where, like, the stinky Skaven skull, perfectly fits the end of that particular quest line. And there's a destruction quest line where you try to go after your squig that's escaped, and 2 of the artifacts are all parts of that squig, because eventually the squig dies and you have to decide what you're going to do with it. And so again, it's kind of themed in terms of not necessarily what it does, but what it is themed to the particular quest line.
And how did you decide kind of what each faction would be doing there? Because, like mine, I ended up doing the mercenary quest, and it did feel very mercenary. It was a lot of kind of running helter-skelter through the city, and because I chose kind of the armory and trying to find more armor, it did feel like I was just trying to survive out there, because the people looking for armor are probably people just desperate to make it through and survive. And Sylvaneth are kind of a few, all the non-Kurnoth hunters in Sylvaneth are pretty made of glass anyway, so it kind of fit. But yeah, I just want to know more about how you, especially because you're writing this for a lot of different war bands that are going to, or different types of war bands that are going to choose to go on these quests. How do you decide, what each faction's going to be doing in this city?
Right. No, it's tricky, and we had to put together this event pack and send it to Adepticon first. So it was like, okay, well, we need some general idea. We haven't written everything exactly yet, and so it kind of puts, and again at that time I was thinking we'd have almost double the number of storylines. So I was like, okay, for example, the Dogs of Warcry storyline. I was like, okay, we'll have one where you're there for selfish reasons, you're finding out whatever you want, and then the other main branch will be you're working for someone else. And I mean, obviously we had to cut it down to half, so it ended up just being one full storyline. But we kind of had these general concepts of like, okay, well, why would Death be there? They're there to gather resources, or there's lots of dead bodies, there's lots of death energy, or maybe they're there to sabotage something or whatever else. And so we kind of had those general ideas, and then kind of took an idea and started working with it. Might be able to share more of this process.
I mean, a big thing is what makes you. It's a hook, right? When you're writing for anything, what hooks you or drives you into the story? What makes you care, right? As a mercenary, or as a chaos follower, right? Like looking at chaos, one of the things that's in the pack is, by the way, these boxes are heavy, and this seems an awful lot like work. Why would you want to do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
So it's lining it up with in a way that's entertaining and draws you into the story. You care, right? Those people who are playing Order in that storyline, you're helping Lieutenant Fusine, and she's got problems, and you're there to help, and you just find your way through the mess that is Excelsius. And thankfully, like, man, what a great setting we ended up picking, because everything did just line up. You put like one of the puzzle pieces in and you saw the rest of the puzzle instantly. And it all worked out and works together and makes sense. And I think that's one of the big things about when we sat down to write these narratives. I was terrified. I was like, this is a big project. Like, Josh, how are we going to do this? Josh, oh, well, we're going to try. And that's it. We Goku just punched it harder till it worked. But it was fast. Once we got started, it was good. It was easy. I think the outlines were good that when we submitted those, and then just we built off of it. And it was, part of it is that Josh and I talked a lot through the process and shared things and worked together on it. It made the weightlifting of writing all those stories all by ourselves easier by massive amounts, right? So, but that's really it. Is you use an adventure hook, right? Do you want to help the dwarf find his clan, or do you want to help the dwarf by just getting the stuff he was after in the first place? You're here to help Lieutenant Fusine. You tell me. And then the next story guides you right to what you decided. Like, hey, so you're on your way out to grab the stuff from X, Y, or Z place. Maybe you're gonna go to the bar. Who knows? The Spin Wester, right? Like, you could be anything, and all of it's meant to be fun, right? And when you keep it in mind that it's supposed to be fun and it's supposed to be engaging, it's really easy to find those things just laying around Excelsius. It's compelling. Like, be a hero, right? We all play these games, win, lose, or draw, but we want to be heroes. We want to be something important, and this gives us that ability to kind of stand up and howl at the moon that our warband did something big, bad, and, well, heroic or infamous, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I did find it helpful to kind of, I got through one of them, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and kind of say, okay, what are my two main choices? Okay, and what do I want to branch off of each of those? And so I did that a couple of times, and that helped it easier to write the process. Like, okay, now I at least know what's my angle for this particular, what's my choice, so that I can write to that choice. And then, like you said, make it engaging, make it interesting, so that at the very least people are going, okay, well, what happens next? Maybe I'm not totally invested in this, but I still want to know what happens next. So.
Yeah. And how did you decide what to do for like the little, you guys had these really cool little awards with this little this little map of, I think that's what it was, right? A map on a
Excelsis.
tile with
Yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah. It's the Spear of Malice in Excelsis.
Mm.
Yeah,
How did you
so
guys decide what to kind of give them out for? Because I find with any kind of event, you can kind of ride a line between full narrative, full competitive, and in between sometimes based on what you tell people you're going to reward with these little prizes that don't mean anything anyway, except they do mean signposts. Um,
mhm.
I don't think you guys told us in advance, but I do want to know kind of how you decided what to do your awards for.
No, that's fair. And I think I mentioned this during the event, but to start with, we didn't know that we were actually getting any prize support or medals or anything.
Oh,
I don't
sure.
think I had really done this with them before. So we still wanted to. But when I had Eric and I had run a Warcry narrative event called Punch and Spires back in 2019. It was a smaller, about 12 people, and really interesting, fun event. And we decided to, at that time, we had 3D printed a bunch of like Warcry dice trays, but we also made up some trophies for a wide range of things. Because as part of the narrative event, as if you advertise competitive awards, people will tailor their lists differently, right? So, um, so if you're going to a tournament, you're going, okay, you're going to play to win because you're in a tournament, and there's places. So to kind of reinforce the storytelling part, we wanted to make sure that people didn't necessarily know there were going to be awards, but to also have a wide range of awards that rewarded certain behaviors or odd things that happened. Like you had the most models die during the day. You have no control over that, right? So,
Right.
so kind of a fun reward, or you ended up killing the most leaders. Perfect. That's awesome. So we didn't want to advertise them because then people might play a certain way,
Yeah.
towards, which could be fun at times. You're like, oh, I'm going to try and get the most heads. I'm going to go after your leader. That it could be fun to do that as well. But we wanted to, you know, show people that there's lots of different ways that you can have fun, and we still recognize certain groups of people for wacky things that happen, or oh, you happen to get this, perfect. But we also like to do rewards in a way where, okay, if somebody's gotten something, they won't get something else, right? The difference
Yeah.
is the medals. We got to figure out what we're going to do with those. But so if somebody had multiple categories in the tiebreakers, well, they're just going to get the one, and then it'd be whoever else is next in line for that. That way, we can widely distribute the fun rewards and items, and people get an appreciation, kind of a thank you, for coming to play.
Yeah, I do think the surprise factor of the awards worked for a few of the things, like exactly how you said, for a few times. I mean, I remember the guy who won the had the most deaths. He did not know he'd be winning for that, and he seemed pretty excited.
Yeah,
It
yeah, he was
seemed
super
like a,
jazzed.
yeah. Um, yeah, it's interesting because I actually went out after the tournament with a few people, and we kind of talked about setting up sort of your own sort of events, stuff like that, sort of going back to our respective cities. And one of the things that was interesting is Warcry is one of those games. I feel like a lot of the other tabletop games, it's not so much, but Warcry, you do get a lot of people saying this should only be a narrative game, or then there's also a lot of people who just enjoy having something to play for. And it had me looking at sort of the Fel Nyroth tournament, which is a narrative tournament. So at least the way it's written, you're supposed to get stuff for having, like, doing the most winning. And you guys did award whoever got the most glory, which is essentially tournament points. Um,
Very similar. Yeah.
and um, so I'd been thinking about sort of announcing ahead of time awards where one of them would be whoever gets the most tournament points and the rest would not. But hearing you talk about it, I do like the idea of surprise awards too. So I would wonder if maybe I'd have most tournament points and best painted, and then announce that there will be weird surprise narrative awards, but not say what they are. I don't know. I don't know how I'd do that, but a lot of food for thought there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you could definitely do that, and I did look at the Fel Nyloth tournament as kind of a template in terms of, okay, well, what kind of awards, we hadn't run an event this large before, so we had no
Right.
idea how many people of the 26 might show up. And, we wanted to kind of spread a generous amount of awards around. So I was like, okay, well, you can do so many categories, but you never know what quite will happen. Usually we like to include a narrative storytelling category, but I didn't know if that would work at Adepticon, like how many people could come with a narrative and what would be available. But next time we can certainly do something like that. But the Felnala tournament has like a guideline on how do you award glory for certain things, and I found some of the things in the web, and we kind of did a hybrid of that, so that we can kind of differentiate people in terms of, all right, so how can we spread these awards around, but also we need tiebreakers, because obviously things are going to line up for different things like that. So that's where we had, it's fun to see how many models permanently died, how many did you kill, and other things like that to kind of balance it out, or use as tiebreakers as well. But I think you could certainly say, we've got these awards, maybe just list the names or whatever you want to call them, and people can get some general ideas. Or you can even say, we're going to have an award for overall glory, best painted, and then we'll have another variety of fun rewards as well. I think people will take that many different ways, but they'll all appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see kind of the future of organizing for this game. I mean, Warcry really came out at the literal worst possible time to try to launch a new game. So the fact that it even survived through that, I think is pretty impressive. So I'm definitely looking forward to what I see people come up with in the future. And you guys had a really, really inspiring tournament for that. Just amazing. So I want to bring it now out of that tournament, but into just you guys. So tell me, for each of you, what warband have you taken through the most epic story, at least personally?
I'll let you go ahead.
So I'm working on one now, but the one that's done the most work for me, that I really dove in with and played an absolute metric ton of games, was my Spire Tyrants.
Mm-hmm.
And of course they have a little bit of a punny name with Rise's Edge, right? It's too funny. So they did a lot of cool stuff. They really had a hard time with a certain group of Shadow Stalkers, not naming names, Josh, but they were an absolute blast to play. I got really motivated in a way that I didn't think I would by the story in the book. Once I got through my convergence, I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to take the gladiator man's head. I'm going to be the best gladiator there ever was. Conguard's my city now. I got all really jazzed about it. It took me a while to get there, but when we got there, it was really, really rewarding. I really enjoyed the modeling and the painting and everything for him. My leader died a lot. Played him through catacombs missions. He died twice just from the hidden traps. So you were in the event, right? So the mission where every time you move, you take damage.
Yep.
He died twice from that. And then another time because he stepped on a rickety bridge. Man, he just could not stay alive. And then he'd never die. He'd just get injured. So
yeah, it's D6 in catacombs. We toned that down for the event.
yeah. D6 wounds every time you move. And just watch this big scary fighter disintegrate, who's for sure needed in the warband.
Actually, that reminds me, how did you guys decide on the sort of mission twist combos that you wanted to run in the tournament?
It took us we wanted some fun, memorable things, and so we kind of came up with some. Again, we know that when you have an event, Warcry has got a lot of fun games and missions where the twists or the scienarios can really screw you over. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want people coming from far away to an event where that might happen. So So first of all, we chose the deployment, which was for match play, so that it's mirrored at least, so that everybody has an equal deployment opportunity. And then we try to choose twists that didn't favor one side or another. So the trap is okay. We got rubble, why not have unstable footing? So if you're moving around, there's a chance to twist your ankle or you step on a sword or whatever else. And then the chaotic beast one was having a third party in there messing things up really can change the game. And maybe we'll scale it back next time we do something like that, because depending on the dice, sometimes it really went one way or another. But that's where Vint came in handy too. He just had tons of models. He was ripping out for those.
Oh man, yeah, that was when we were talking about him. I was like, hey, if we're at Adepticon, we're at this very big event that's drawing people from all over the place. We need to do something equally big, right? And the Gargant's battle wasn't for sure yet, and I was like, well, I have a ton of chaotic beasts. Like, it was literally all the trolls, all the horrors, all the raptorics,
Yep.
all the chaos warhounds. All of those were at varying stages of ready. Um, but
Yeah.
I still think I cranked out almost 100 models just in case we had more than our
Whoa.
26 in about 2 weeks. So those were some pretty crammed models, but they got there. There was only one casualty, which was the other worry, right? Like big event, lots of stuff. I think one of the horrors got stepped on, and
Oh, no.
that just means that yeah, he's all right though. We'll
He's just more horrifying now.
Yeah, he split into two. Really, is what happened.
Right.
He's gonna split and split again. The horror. But no, it was. We really wanted to find something that would be fun. Again, fun, unique, memorable, right? This game is so cool, and you can do so much with it, and the system is fantastic. That it's just easy to find those, right? Like I think the missions and the twists took us one afternoon, probably a couple hours. We sat down, we hashed them all out, just boom, 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 boom. And then, it was the writing. The writing, I think, was the scarier mountain to climb. But once we got up there, we hit K2 real fast. So.
Yeah, and the last twist, it was more just like, what's the best way to end a day of gaming with a grudge match, So we took that one from the 2020 match play. It was like, ooh, this twist is really interesting. That might be a fun one to end the day, where you're just, I'm tired of fighting things. I'm gonna take you out, kind of, match. So
you're gonna die, clown.
Yeah, I thought that was a good one too. Although I rolled nothing but dust for both of my artifact rolls, and I also ended up winning both of my first two games. So I ended up in round 3 against someone who had a very well put together warband that he could have run the next day if he had wanted to in the competitive tournament, and who had 3 artifacts. So in that just kill stuff mission, I was not the one just killing stuff. Let's say it that way. But it actually fit. It fit narratively very well because I was heading to the armory to not die so much, and ended up, I think the final thing for the armory mission is like you go in and then you consider going out, and then you fight this Untamed Beast player with infinite artifacts, and then you go, no, I'm gonna go back into the armory and grab some armor to stay alive more. But I am excited for running a new campaign with my very fragile Arch Revenant having 5 more wounds. That'll be nice. But yeah, so that was all a tangent. We were about to get into Josh's what warband have you kind of taken through the most epic story?
Oh, definitely. Oh, I have to say it's probably my Cypher Lords, because they were my first warband. And I wanted to make them unique, so I spent a lot of time sculpting fox masks on them.
Oh,
and,
cool.
And I had this fun background and lore, and I think I played the most quests too. I think I did 3 quests altogether, as well as some multiplayer games. So they had a nice, background, and they had plenty of rivals. I could carry grudges into my next game with. So I enjoyed them quite a bit.
So do you guys, because both of you listed bespoke warbands, and then I've got a picture up here of one of your K9 Shadow Stalkers.
Yep.
Do you guys mostly play bespokes against each other, or do you kind of mix up the AOS ones too?
So I've got a range. So I played. I started with the Cypher Lords, and then I played my KO, because I have a KO AOS army. So I was like, And then because we were doing the Dogs of Warcry podcast, Peyton and I, for 2 seasons, have split up different warbands based on what was available. But I did start up a Slaves to Darkness one over this past summer. Played that with my stepson a little bit. So I don't really have a whole lot of outside of the normal. I got Slave to Darkness, and played the Cool Boys as part of, again, looking at the Morrick Hills campaign with Peyton. And so some of those are all based on the podcast and the direction it goes into that.
For me, I have a ton of different AOS armies, so I've played a few different ones. There was a bit where I was playing Beasts of Chaos. They were just fun. I reoccurring theme. Durai the Unlucky was my HQ, and he also died anytime he stepped on a bridge. But so I ran them a bunch too. The let's see. Ran them. I'm currently working on a bunch of Dark Oath Savagers. I really fell in love with the lore out of the book War Queen. I know it's a little older now, but the Dark Oath in that book just really had me gun ho and ready to go. Like I really liked it how they all play. Like the way that the story wrote, the awfulness of chaos and the 8 points and just existing there, how devastating it can be. There, the Bloodwind spoils. Like there's tons of bad stuff that happens. And it was just neat to see these people who are just average Joe humans, and it wasn't that they were giving their souls to the dark gods. It was more like, dark gods, could you give us a hand? And they're, yep. And I think that train of thought and that line from Age of Sigmar really is kind of neat, where you see, like in Red Feast, you see the benevolence of Khorne. And I don't think you could say that in many places and be like, yeah,
Right.
no, that's how that works. But really, like, we're gonna make this fighter stronger because she's better and now she's winning. And if you keep winning and you keep staying, and it was really neat to see. So like, but yeah, so Beasts of Chaos. I do a lot of chaos. I mean, at the event as the ringer, I was running just Chaos Warriors because they would be there running around, taking the best so they can make them into weapons, as they do. So, but yeah, just a little bit of everything. It makes it fun, but again, mostly chaos stuff.
Yeah, you have a Slaves of Darkness army, which incorporates quite a few of the.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the running joke with some of the people on the team is, have you talked, like, hey, so you've been at this tournament all weekend, have you talked about Warcry or Underworlds yet to your opponents? Like, so, but yeah, it's my Slaves of Darkness army. I think it's 3 Fomeroid Crushers. Like, I love those models. The Kitty Cats, the giant Mind Stealer Spheranxes are super cool.
Yeah.
And the stories behind both of those are so neat and so cool. The Ogreoid Myrmidon is just a neat model. You can't say no to that giant angry fella. So it's just the models are so great. And I have Warcry warbands in my Slaves to Darkness list that I do take to like the tournaments and things. So it's just the setting is so good. I've got a box of Unmade. I've run them for a really long time too, just because the stories in the books have been so good. Like the first story in the Warcry anthology was like, man, I thought I'd hate these guys, right? Like, they're wearing their faces for belts. Like, it's pretty metal, man. Like, it's kind of edgy, but pretty metal. Like, I don't know. And once I got to painting them and doing the hobby on them, and I was hooked. I was like, oh, they gotta at least get through a couple convergences before they get racked up, and it just the excitement of a new band and a story that we get to tell is cool. So it's easy to find our way into other things.
I think that's Google Meet being angry with us. Let me. All right, sorry for the smash cut, folks. Google Meet had a little bit to say about our recording, but we should be all good now. So you guys were just talking about kind of the wide variety of things you run. Do you kind of tune up and down certain warbands to kind of go more evenly against others, or do you kind of just let the chips fall where they may and kind of let any kind of slaughterings happen just be part of the story?
Well, I think you probably saw that our pairings was more, if you haven't played each other and you want to, do it. And then after that, it was just saying, if you want to play each other, so
Yeah.
we didn't really have a method to the madness per se, except for trying to make a fairly balanced experience.
Sure.
I mean, so at the tournament, the event, I don't know, tournament event, we it really was like, hey, this isn't for a giant golden statue that says you're amazing and beat everybody in the world at Warcry, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
for cool narrative awards and trophies that'll be able to be used at more cool narrative events, right? And so I guess when it comes to pairings, it really was like just play each other, like have some fun. Again, fun, memorable um, games. And now when it comes to us personally, like for
Mm-hmm.
me, if I'm playing somebody newer, or generally like unless I'm working on a like I'll ask somebody, hey, is it okay if I continue a narrative with you? Or if it's a convergence, I think it's very fair to be like, hey, do you want to play me in my convergence? You're probably gonna beat me up. Um, I had a friend of mine come and see me at my house every day to play his convergence for about 2.5 weeks.
Whoa.
Um, because it was a it was a tough convergence.
Most of
And
them
we
are
got through
brutal.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got through it. I had all of my warbands were ready to take a convergence, and even some that weren't real warbands were ready to take a convergence. Um, but it was a thing, right? Like he was a newer player, and so when it came to it, it was like, hey, let's find a way to make this fun. Like you want to do this exactly by the book, and that's cool. Let's find some twists to throw in. Let's adjust this thing or that thing and make it fun. Let's see if we can tweak something to make it make sense. Um, and in all cases, after the second time, I'm like, well, I'm not going to grind all my experience out of your convergence. Like that seems bad.
Right.
So I just started running, running essentially naked warbands. Like, hey, here's 1,000 points of Skaven I found on the shelves. Go kill
Mm-hmm.
them. Nope. Okay, well, we'll try
I mean,
something
good
else.
luck killing 1,000 points of Skaven,
Yeah.
but sure.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here are a bunch of clan rats. Can you do it? Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
you know. So it was fun. But that's really it. Is like very unless I'm playing against somebody else who I know is about where I am on my narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I generally try, like Josh said earlier, like you just keep it fun, right?
Yeah.
You keep it fair, you keep it close, you keep it fun. Because that's what we do our hobbies for, right? Like our hobbies are for fun.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to something so steeped in narrative, like it's really easy. Like make the moments memorable, right? It wasn't, Chucklefoot McGee that just killed. It wasn't a guy. I didn't just kill a guy. I killed Chucklefoot McGee. Like look at him. I didn't. I didn't sign up with Higglesport and have him do the thing to me not being able to go back and be like, "What's up, Higglesport? You got to have a talk, you and I." you know, like
And then for you
uh
guys personally, like for that attachment that you're talking about, right? That you build with your people, like what to you builds it the most? Is it memorable moments from games that happen? Is it the story of the campaign they go through? Is it the paint job that you put on them? Like for you, what's the most effective thing for building it for you personally?
Take it away.
so for me personally, it's the memorable moments, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like we've got Durai, we've got Ryza. They just fall into the lava, man. It was like they just lived there. Um, like it's a thing. But each time, like I was like, oh man, there's like a bunch of points. I had another new player that came, and we were hanging out. And he had a skeleton push a rat ogre into the lava. Right? It took him
Mm-hmm.
3 skeletons to do it, but when he did it, I was like, that's just bad. Uh, and that moment, that game happened right when Catacombs launched, like really within like the week,
Mm-hmm.
and that player will still talk about that to his friends. They'll be like, "Oh, you're the guy with the Skaven." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." He pushed me right in, like, and
Cool.
it's the memorable moment, and knowing that especially in the case of my heroes, somehow they survive, like right, like they didn't die from falling in lava. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of cool. I'm gonna have to start like dry brushing them in Corvus just because they're completely burnt to a crisp.
Uh,
But but it's definitely the moments for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think a lot of it's more it's the memorable moments in the games. You know, a lot of people talk about like Mordheim and their one-armed crossbowmen with two, an eye and a telescope. You know, these stories kind of evolve over time, and bad things happen. Like we were first playing Catacombs, and we had the traps. No matter where my shot stalkers were going, no matter where your spire tires, half of our warband was moving it down because we're landing on traps. Just like, how many ones can we roll? But it was absolutely glorious. These kind of stories I've developed over time. It's like, I didn't take you down, but the traps did. I find sometimes it's the stories in the book that are compelling and help you generate ideas for the color schemes and start your backstory. But it's really the ongoing games and the narratives and what happens in those games that kind of start to shape your rivalries and the personalities you might attribute to certain warriors and things like that.
Yeah. Cool. And then, do you think about that when you're when you're building the crew itself? I mean, I guess this is less of a thing for the out-of-the-box warbands because you're usually just getting one box and then going with that. But when you're picking an AOS warband, do you kind of build the warband trying to anticipate what kind of story you want to tell with them? Do you just rule of cool based on the models, or do you think it all about the game mechanics and kind of how you want them to play? Like, how do you kind of go after that?
For me, I generally start off with again, what experience am I looking for? Right. I guess that's usually where I start any list building for any game that's Warhammer related. Is what experience am I looking for? You go back to the guy who played me in his Convergence a million times. The experience I was looking for was something fast, easy to remember, that he had a chance to win against. Some of those Convergences are just downright nasty. Right. And so for that experience, I wasn't looking to write a narrative for 20 clan rats. Like, I'm looking to write my narrative for Durai. I'm looking for Ryza, right? Like, I'm looking for those different narratives. If that's what I'm looking to play, right? That game and that warband comes out against opponents that are looking to have that same experience. So when it comes to building, before I even look at what I can put in, what I can't put in, I'm looking for what experience is this going to give me and my opponent. Is this going to be fun when he throws my Chaos Lord, who looks just like all my other Chaos Warriors, into the lake? Is that going to still be fun? If the answer is no, then maybe I need to do something a little different. Maybe I need to add something that's going to give me a little bit. Or is this, hey, this is a really skewed list. I have 20 clan rats, like they're all the same thing. And they don't have enough points to keep up or enough models. My activation wars are just going to be rough. They're just going to feel like they're quagmired down and fighting the same thing. You can only kill so many clan. I mean, Vermintide does give you the option to kill almost infinite clan rats. Rest in peace, Skaven boys. But, eventually that's not super fun. It doesn't, even though you might have a narrative for every single clan rat on the table, will your opponent feel that?
Right.
Will they get the experience that you have invested this narrative in them? You can paint them all different. You can do all sorts of stuff, but there's only so many rats with a spear and a shield that you can have before you run into the samesies kind of feels, right? So something unique, something dynamic, and something that will add to the experience in and of the nature of it, right? I have a friend who has a running rivalry with one of my AOS generals. I have built a Warcry team, and whenever we play Warcry together, that's the team we play because he hates that general.
That's perfect. What is the general? I'm curious.
The legendary Dreg Stymie. He is a master molder who hides behind rat ogres.
Okay.
And in a game like when Warcry first came out, we did a thing where we adapted the your characters can die rule right out of the book. So like, hey, you got to roll for this. If you roll bad, your character's just gone, right?
Yeah. And start a new campaign, bud. Or have your hero do it, yeah.
Yeah, you have to promote somebody, right? Like we did Destiny levels as promotions, so we could take clan rats and make them storm vermin in my army. He could take some of his iron or his hammers, and he could give them an extra attack like once per game, like almost like a Destiny level. And like we did a lot of really cool stuff with it. Dreg Stymie, all my other characters got blended. They all died, every single one of them, except Dreg Stymie, who managed to, in the last round, managed to like scurry away behind a building as the last of his rat ogres gets aced, and all the other heroes on the table had been injured, wounded, killed, etc. There had been like 3 vermin lords that had been summoned because my bell rolls were hot that got absolutely murdered. But Dreg Stymie, this little guy, like hiding behind his rat ogres, somehow makes it into the building, into the gnaw hole, and survives. And because he got away, like the other players on the table like vowed there and then, like in real life, like we will kill Dreg Stymie. So the
That's
so
great.
Dreg Stymie, he runs and hides and stays behind his rat ogres and Warcry. And the narrative there is that when we do play, it's Dreg Stymie's escape from all the other stuff that was trying to kill him. So it's always fun to see him get where he's going and do his thing. And again, moments of glory, right?
Yeah,
He
yeah.
got away. Like he didn't do anything that whole game. He was just there to exist, and maybe hand out some passive buffs in Age of Sigmar, and turns into this quest from 2 people to find him in the sewers and throw him in the lava himself and maybe kill him. But again, he just lucks out. He's not been killed yet. Knock on polysynthetics. Yeah.
Nice.
Like
And do you play to keep him alive now? Like, do you play it? Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
play
Oh, yeah.
for the? Yeah, of course.
Yep. Well,
Right.
When the new Grand Alliance books came out, and Cities of Sigmar had the Greywater Hello, which is a double that lets you shoot real mean, right?
Right.
And so I had a grudge torpedo shot at him, and it almost killed him. He had like 1 wound left, and then the rest of the game I just had his rat ogres like kind of stand in front of him, right? Because he just got hurt.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely. I still play him to keep him alive. He's been mortally wounded a couple times, but he's managed to walk it off, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, I tend to go with more of a kind of a balanced play approach where I'll look at, okay, what model, you gotta have your leader, definitely want at least a couple champs. And, I'm always looking at, okay, different weapon profiles. You want some reach weapons, you want some up close weapons, or, any unique abilities you try and take advantage of. So I do plan more a little bit more tactically, I think, but I also don't tend to use the same models more than one, or like I don't take 2 or 3 champions. I usually have 1, maybe 2 with the different.
Sure.
But I don't really try to optimize too much, but do try to have a warband that has a little bit of everything, so I can handle whatever unique twist or scenario kind of pops up. Obviously, some warbands like my KO, where they're all mainly shooting. Well, it doesn't matter if you get any sort of anti-shooting twist, your whole warband's going to be suffering. So then you just have to, just like anything, you work your way out of it, and if you succeed, then surpass the challenge.
So you do think about game mechanics when you do it, but you also kind of spread it out so that you're kind of bringing a lot of different things as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So the out of the box ones must be perfect for you then, right? Because they come with so many different, like everybody's doing something else.
Right. I'll usually take 2 of the boxes and kind of mix it so that I can have more people with gears or whatever else. But yeah, that usually worked pretty well. My AOS army, I just took, depending on what with dwarves, KO, I took 2 balloon boys just because I wanted mobility, and then the rest were on foot. So it was small. It was only 6 miles, but it worked out pretty well. But I knew it was going to be challenging, and activation orders and objectives. And, but shooting could be nasty. So.
Can attest.
Yeah, if you're not worried about winning on points, KO can be really brutal. Because in competitive, you can, a lot of the time in KO, you'll find yourself losing having tabled the opponent, and they'll be like way ahead of you on points. You got slaughtered, even though you're still on the table and they're not. But I imagine in narrative, it can, when it doesn't matter who won on points, I can see a lot of that.
Yeah, unless it's your convergence, then you want to win. Yeah, so then it can be a little tricky.
That's true.
Yeah, actually, I found myself, as Justin, who played with before, cats, I was like, okay, well,
Oh, you
once you
played against him?
no,
Oh,
but
okay.
he was in the event and obviously in the
Yeah.
tournament on Sunday, and it's like, well, yeah, he's got 4 models, super fast, they can shoot with magic and/or get in combat, and I was like, I wonder if the KO can do that. And he said, well, you can. You can take 5 Bloom Boys at 1,000 points, and that might be something similar. I'll have to try it one day and see. It's like you got movement 10, they can shoot, they can melee, they can. Maybe it's something similar, but probably not as tough.
Yeah, the cats, they were crazy because they were basically unkillable. He only lost 3 cats the whole weekend in 7 games. Um,
Yeah.
and I've seen a lot of people sort of on Discord like propose other super low model count war bands and say like, oh well, if cats can do all that winning, like I bet this can too. And I do think that it's something specific about cats. Um, when you look at what they're doing point for point, they're doing more than what a lot of other um, what a lot of other teams can put together for something that huge.
Yeah, yeah.
That was a really funny one to see. So the Tome of Champions kind of allowing a whole bunch of new things that you can do in the game that you couldn't before, both in terms of adding one to the round timer so that
Right.
like really durable fighters can actually have that durability matter over time a little more, but then also changing the
Or
points
slower
really
models.
did, I think, help a lot. I think, that cat
Yeah,
warband
yeah,
wouldn't have worked before the points changes.
yeah,
Well, and
yeah.
I
Especially when all those really slow war bands need that extra round to do
Mm-hmm.
anything if you're not coming on until turn 2. So I think that helped a lot there too.
Yeah.
well, and Iron Jaws being able to, yeah, the slower warbands just being able to catch up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can outrun Iron Jaws for about 3 turns, but that fourth turn now, like, good luck. Like, it's gonna be rough. Um, and yeah, I think the points updates are good. In some of my lists that I had, things changed in a way that made it much easier and much better, I
Mm-hmm.
think, on the whole. Uh, and like made it easier to include other things, right? Like it's one thing to be able to, as an Untamed Beast player, you can add, your Rock Tusk and maybe a Chaos Warhound now, right? Like you're not waiting for your third or fourth territory
Mm-hmm.
to be able to grab a new model, right? You're able to grab some of these at a cheaper point cost and make it really matter. Having a Chaos Warhound in a group of Chaos Warriors, it gives you that opportunity that it can go run and do something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? It can go, pester or harry while the rest of your slow stompy boys get wherever they're gonna go. And it's just good. It's just I think the points really helped
Yeah,
equalize a
especially
lot of the playing.
yeah, yeah. I definitely think 3 was too short. 5 in Catacombs can feel a little long at times, but it makes
Yeah.
sense in Catacombs. But 4, I think, is a really good, oh, uh,
Yeah, I
long
don't
limit.
I don't know how you make just 4 rounds really work with the way Catacombs is set up, but I do
Right.
agree it feels a little long for Warcry. It doesn't quite feel like Warcry sometimes. And I love that Red Harvest, they found that happy medium of 4. Red Harvest
Yep.
is funny where the 4 rounds should be better for slow warbands, but the lava pits, if you're slow or if you have big bases, sometimes you just can't navigate those lava pits.
Yeah, I thought it
So
was interesting. You can't jump over them like you can in Catacombs. You can jump over it, but you take heat damage, but you
hmm
can't in Red Harvest, which I thought was
yeah,
a difference.
big incentive in Red Harvest. If you can start your people up on platforms, absolutely start your people up on platforms for that exact. Yeah,
Gotcha.
anytime for people watching, because you get your little deployment right, and it's really just a big cylinder where you can put them anywhere. Most people put on the battlefield floor anyway, but definitely in Red Harvest, always put them in the clouds if you can. Plus, just to play with the 3D. I don't know. I think Warcry is at its best when you're making it 3D.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, well, that's mostly all I've got for you as far as questions about the game. I guess my last thing I wanted to ask was if you guys had any advice for people wanting to run their own event, be it narrative or otherwise. I'm just so curious because of, how much work you put into making this event run at at Adepticon. Yeah, I just want to know what advice the two of you would have for people wanting to do the same.
You want to take it away?
Find somebody that's willing to do like 90% of the work and just piggyback. All kidding aside, this event doesn't go without Josh. Period. And having a somebody that you can team up with and make the things happen that need to happen. It's your community, it's your friends, it's your buddies, it's the people that care and are passionate about the same thing as you. Find somebody that's that, right? And if you can't find somebody that's that in your local community, reach out to people in the internet world, right? You can find Josh on Dogs of Warcry. I'm sure you can find you too, Dan. Like it's easy to reach out, find somebody, make a community, and it sounds really terrifying, but I'm I'm just another guy. Like we're all just random people that like this
Right.
thing. Like let's work together and we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
So find somebody, even if it's just one person in your local group that's willing to try. The other thing is to make like in a local scene, make sure you have that community not just at like your friend level, but have a location. Go, don't be afraid to go talk to your FLGS or your local store of whatever, wherever you go to play, and ask them, hey, would you mind if we tried to run an event? Chances are, you mentioned it earlier, Dan, like you used to play Magic. People who can organize a Magic event can definitely help you organize a Warcry event or any other event you're looking to do. So find somebody that's willing to help you, because it does seem, even if it's just somebody to cheerlead from the sidelines, find somebody that's there that's going to help you, and then go forward and go out into the community. If your first event has 4 people at it, that's fine. That's 4 people that are going to have a great time and give you feedback to get more people. And you just keep working on it until you get the amount of people and the right people in it, A good community is a good community because of who's in it, right? At the end of the day, it's Dan, you played in our event. You were a part of it, right? Like you were in the machine, like right? Like it's the community that makes the event great. We're just there to help facilitate it, right? So keep that in mind when you're running your own event.
Yeah, and to add to that, it's more, there's a lot of resources out there, and we wanted to, when we were trying to think of ideas, we wanted an event that we would enjoy playing ourselves, and we really like the choose your own adventure path. It's like, okay, well, how can we make this fit in a 3-game, 1-day event? And and some of that is, okay, we've got the stories and everything was working well, but it's also like, how do we make this, handing out the next part of the quest, we got a little better at, but it felt a little clunky at first. But in terms of like, okay, we're going to have all the missions next to all the boards, we'll have all the sheets with all the chaotic, so we tried to make that as simple and easy as possible for the players so that you can focus on the narrative and not so much the logistics, and try to keep it a little easier and kind of ramping up on the rules as we went along. So just in terms of running an event, think about, okay, well, if I'm doing this, what's the easiest way to do this, or what's this, how much time do I need to let people get lunch? We don't want to starve anybody while we're playing, right? Account for lunch, make sure people got time to come back, they're full, they're ready to play some more,
Yeah.
So kind of just think that, like if I'm playing an event, what kinds of things do I enjoy? Maybe we'll do those kinds of things. And I think one thing that, I had some discussions with other people after the event, the different types of NEOs, narrative event organizers, and one thing that kind of came up is that we also try to take as much information as we could that's from Warcry already, mechanics that you're familiar with, artifacts and things that look similar or behave similarly, hidden agendas, which are already a function of it. So we didn't create any unique, confusing rule systems or anything to make, you don't have to. It can be really fun sometimes, but I think in a large event like this, where you have people from a wide variety of backgrounds and skill levels, borrowing from the wealth of information that's already there is perfect, because people are familiar with it. It's already been tested in a lot of ways, and then you can kind of just make sure it flows. And then the people can focus on the story, not so much about, learning, okay, what are the new mechanics for this particular situation. So I think that helped a lot, and hopefully you'll share a little bit of what your experiences are, and if you have any thoughts and what we could do next time or in the future too. So.
I mean, for what you guys should do next time is just more of that. No, I had a
Thank
really
you.
great time, and I think a lot of people were really into it. Um, yeah, yeah. So this has been a real pleasure. Everyone watching, please check out the Dogs of Warcry podcast. Chances are most of you have heard of them already, but there has been, a huge explosion in Warcry interest very recently, ever since post Red Harvest and the Toma Champion. So if you haven't sort of in your internet digging found the Dogs of Warcry, I really, really hope that you'll check them out. Yeah, really cool podcast and a different perspective on the game than what I usually offer on this channel. It's been really awesome to finally meet you guys and to find out more about kind of how you play this game, right? Because you know you guys have been around for 6 months or a year longer than I have, as far as actually making stuff for the game, but also yeah, like I just said, always doing it in a very different way. So I'm glad to finally find you guys and find you to be
Yeah.
super awesome.